Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Lauren Winnett, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to Brick by Brick. I'm your host, Lauren Winnett, and today we've got a great podcast. Today we have Scott. Scott and I met about a year ago at a mastermind down in South Carolina. At the time, I was very impressed by his knowledge, by how easy he was to talk to, and just generally how much he cared about the people around him. And it was for that reason that when I was exploring leaving my W-2 in the summer of last year, I reached out to Scott and picked his brain on the topic. And I haven't told him this yet, but the conversation I had with him was very impactful on the decisions that I made. And it will be a favor that is not forgotten for a long, long time. Scott, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I'm excited to talk to you about what you do, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, but you are running and operating an HR strategy company, essentially, right? That works with businesses, entrepreneurs, and has worked with VPs and C-level suites. And you've been in that space for about 20 years, correct?
Correct, yeah. And thank you so much for having me on, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess just give us a little bit of background. I mean, like I said, we've talked to several times and I have a kind of a good idea, but just give us an idea of like where you came from, how you got into what you're doing now, and kind of what your overall thesis or philosophy on the space or on entrepreneurship is.
Yeah, great. So I live in Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised here. So I'm a Midwesterner, I guess we call ourselves. So I love people. That's why I think I'm in HR. I love talking. So you probably hear me rant and go off on a lot of tangents. But, I grew up in the, Cleveland area, played baseball for several years. So I think we've got a love for that game. And so pitched, played third base, and, grew up in a great family, went to church every Sunday. So my faith's very important to me. And I think that also kind of probably helped lead me into the field of human resources because it's all about people, right? And I've been in HR, like you said, Lauren, for about 20 years here in April. So I can't believe where the 20 years is gone, but I get to help people every single day. I get to make an impact, whether it's, me now owning Fortitude HR Solutions, or like you said, we do business and, HR high level strategy coaching and consulting. And then we also do recruiting. So we get to build, high performing teams, anything from an executive assistant all the way up to a CEO of an organization. And it's very similar to sports, which is why I love it. Like being a general manager, I get to kind of help people put the right people, in the seats, not to use an analogy from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. But so those are things that I enjoy. And with that, just being able to, again, make an impact and serve and help other people. So that's a little bit about me. I'm married. I have a 17-year-old, soon to be 18-year-old son next week on Thursday. So we're super excited for that. He's been dating the same girl for about 3 years. We consider her family as well. So we're going on a trip to Italy to celebrate their graduation. And we're spoiling them by taking them business class instead of economy. So there's a lot of good things that we're very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do.
That's awesome. As somebody that's going to have a 10-year-old on Monday next week, I have a hard time even imagining having a 17-year-old, let alone someone that has a girlfriend. So you mentioned that you own Fortitude HR. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what that company does and what some of your clients are looking for when they come to you initially trying to decide on hiring you?
Absolutely, yeah. So we do a lot of different things. So the main two phases of our business, we do recruiting. So if someone needs help, they don't want to go through 100 resumes that they might get on LinkedIn or Indeed. They just don't have the time or they don't want to spend the time reviewing those things. We'll help a client, write the job description, figure out really what they need. We'll help do a compensation study to figure out what does the market say that they need to pay that position. We'll get into that in a minute because that's a big thing. But then we'll help go out and, we'll weed down 100 people and we'll send them like the top 3 to 5 candidates that fit kind of what their expectations are, what they're looking for, what's in that job description, what's in that compensation range. And then we'll help with setting up interviews. We'll help with writing offer letters. So we try to be like more of a boutique or a concierge recruiting firm. We work on contingency, so we don't get paid unless the role is filled. But this is where, we work with a lot of small business owners. We also work with very large businesses as well that are, private and publicly traded. The biggest thing is like if you're going from being a solopreneur to adding your first team member, a lot of times we're always scared about how much is it going to cost me. But if you don't have that position filled, what's that opportunity cost that you can't get things done? And on the consulting side of what we do, I look at like time and revenue, like kind of dollar amounts. Is it a $10 item, $100 item, $1,000 or $10,000 item? And as you build and grow and scale your business, looking at where do you spend your time? That's the one thing that everybody has the same amount of. Nobody has more time or nobody has less time, right? And so with that, where do you spend the time? It becomes really an important gauge of where things are at, especially in your business as you're trying to grow. So we try to help take away some of the time commitments from a recruiting standpoint and try to find the right people for those right seats and help organizations continue to build the right structure and the right team so they can go out and be successful. The other side of Fortitude HR Solutions is all about business and HR consulting. So we help organizations that, again, maybe solopreneurs or small business owners don't think it's important. But to me, the most critical thing that any business should have as soon as they start is what is your culture? What is your vision? What is your mission? What is your values? What's your why? What's that purpose? What gives you that competitive advantage, whether you're going out and hiring somebody or where you're going to be trying to attract customers or clients that you're going to work with? You need to know what you stand for and what you're all about. And so we do a lot of culture work with clients, but then we also look at who's currently on the team. What does that organizational structure look like? For a lot of businesses, you have the CEO, you may have an assistant that reports to the CEO. That's always usually a good first hire. But then you have like the C-suite people like you talked about. It could be director of marketing, could be director of sales, could be a director of finance or accounting, director of HR, director of engineering, depending upon what type of business you're in. And so we'll help with developing that organizational structure. What roles and responsibilities does each of those seats on the bus kind of have? What's their core competencies? And then from there, we'll help write job descriptions. So again, there's clear expectations. People, Lauren, will always live up or live down to expectations. And if we don't communicate that clearly to them and we don't give them clear goals and clear job duties and key performance indicators, and we don't like talk about what our expectations are, people are going to always disappoint us, right? So we got to look in the mirror, I think, as leaders, as business owners, and make sure that we're providing the right type of direction and the right type of culture. So we do those kind of things. We help with setting strategic planning. We do SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in your business. We get into setting SMART goals. Like SMART goals are very specific, measurable, attainable, achievable, relevant, and then also time bound. And then how do you cascade those down from the top of the organization down to the bottom of the organization? So we help with those things. We help with compliance. I do a lot of executive coaching. I do a lot of training and development, a lot of like mid-level, like leadership training. That's where a lot of like big companies, they really screw it up. They promote, Sally or Billy that's really good technically, but they've never been a manager. They've never been a leader. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to like go from being a peer now to being the boss. So we do a lot of training with that. A lot of like, Simon Sinek, who I follow, he's a leadership author out there. Mm-hmm. He talks about like the human skills, a lot of human skill stuff like conflict resolutions and leadership and influence and getting into time management practices. And again, how do we use those things to make ourselves better and more valuable to our employees, to our team members, to the vendors, to the customers and the clients that we work with. So we do a lot of that. I work with clients on, reviewing their marketing budget. Where are they spending their money? What's that return on investment? I'm not a finance guy, but I understand finance well enough where I can look at a profit and loss statement with somebody, which if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, make sure you know your numbers. You need to be reviewing that stuff at a minimum once a month and looking at what the actual is, if you hopefully have a budget as well, and what's the variance and what are you doing? A lot of people don't do this. They just operate blindly out of the bank account. Gets a lot of people in trouble. So we help with that. If there's HR like sensitive topics, we'll get into investigations, whether it's harassment, diversity, sexual harassment, kind of things that we need to get into. So we help with investigations with that. We help with hiring. We help with the coaching and the firing, all the no fun stuff that nobody likes HR for. We do all of those things as well. And that includes like employee relations issues. And some of that gets into motivation and our job again as leaders is to motivate, inspire, and get the most out of our people, right? And also know what's important to them. How do we allow them to grow? How do we allow them to reach their goals? When you take care of your people and you say please and thank you and you show appreciation and you actually genuinely, authentically care, people are never going to leave you. Like they're going to want to be with you through thick and thin. They're going to run through the brick wall for you. So we really take pride in doing that each and every day with our business. And then I help other clients too, Lauren. I'm sorry, this is long-winded, but I also help a lot of other clients with like merger and acquisition activities, whether it's, conducting due diligence, figuring out do they have the right people in the seats from that acquisition standpoint? What does that look like? So I've helped a couple of different clients with buying organizations as well. So that's in a very broad kind of concept what we do. We stay away from, I don't want to process payroll. We've got a payroll vendor that we love that we don't get affiliate marketing for because I'm not an affiliate marketing kind of guy, but we like Paylocity. So we send a lot of people through Paylocity. I'm a big fan of making sure you're in compliance. So do you have labor law posters, the federal and the state ones, posted in your office? If you don't, there's a fine that's associated with that. If you've got remote employees, they need to be available like on an intranet so people know what those laws are as well. So we help with some of those things. We also don't write employee handbooks. I don't want to do that. I don't love that aspect of HR. I like the people aspect of HR. And so with that, you've probably heard like people in HR are like called like Toby from The Office. I don't ever want to be a Toby. Like I want to help add value. I want to help people grow. I want to help companies grow. That's what gets me motivated and excited to get out of bed each day and do what I do. So that was a long-winded answer. Sorry, Lauren.
No need to apologize. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And, somebody like me that came from a large company that had HR, that was just kind of the hand of hiring and firing and dealing with payroll. There's a lot of things that you don't see necessarily as an entrepreneur. But I think a couple of things that maybe I want to unpack on that are pertain to this conversation would be, if I'm a newer entrepreneur, right, I'm making some good money and I'm looking for maybe my first or second or third hire, whether they be a people manager or just kind of a task-oriented person. How do I know when the right time is to make that jump, to make that initial hire? And then I also want to spend some time talking about culture. You hear a lot about how you need to grow your culture, and that's really easy to do when you're a solopreneur and the culture is you, right? Your personality is the culture, but how do you translate the culture? And like, I have core values and I have mission statements. How do you translate that from me, myself, and I to across the team to get everybody on the boat and rowing in the same direction? So maybe let's start with the first piece of, as a newer entrepreneur, how do I kind of know when to take the next step of hiring that person? And should that first step be a contractor or should it be a full-time employee?
It's a great question. So I think each person's going to be dependent upon them and where their financial situation's at. But I alluded a little bit to this in the beginning as we started here, Lauren. What's the opportunity cost? And so like when I do consulting work with people, I'll ask them to fill out a task responsibility worksheet. And they'll write down in 15-minute increments, how do they spend their time, Monday through Friday, right? And then, we write down what the task is. Does it add value? Who's doing it? How often is it done? But then again, assign a dollar amount to it. Is it a $10 item, $100 item? Is it generating a ton of revenue for the business? That's what really, as a small business owner, we need to focus on, because revenue solves all problems. Again, we were at the mastermind with Tim Bratz. Tim says it all the time. It's a great line. It's 100% true. So if we're a solopreneur or a small business owner, we need to focus, how do we generate more revenue, right? And so things that are $1,000 and $10,000 an hour activities, that's what we need to focus on. The things that are $10 and $100, I'd be looking, my first hire would be definitely hire an assistant, somebody that can come in and help. And again, it's easier said than done. You've got to be willing to give up control. I'm a little bit of a control freak, if you ask my wife, especially when it comes to business. And so with that, like, we're hiring our first executive assistant as I'm talking to you now, and she starts on Monday, March 31st. I've been in business, it'll be 6 years in June. It took me a long time. Now my wife's been like helping in the background, but like that's good and bad. Like sometimes there's tension there because I don't always communicate the way I should, but understanding again, like what your value of your time is worth is so important. And then again, what kind of revenue are you bringing in? What can you really afford? What's your budget look like? Do you have contracts in your business where where that revenue's coming in for the next 12 months? Some people have a predictable business where you can do that. Other people, it's very transactional and you may not be able to do that. But this is where it's so important to have like key performance indicators and metrics. And you're used to this stuff, Lauren, working for a large organization like I am. Understanding again, like for every 10 contracts, it's going to bring in X number of dollars from a revenue standpoint, which will help us go out and expand and grow. Me personally, to answer your other part of that question, I'd much rather hire a W-2 team member or somebody that I can work with either in person or meet with like once a week or once every other couple weeks. I like that. I'm just a people person. I can do Zoom meetings. I can do team meetings. I'm on them all day, Lauren. I don't love it, right? I'd rather doing this in person. But with that, at the end of the day, again, it goes back to that individual leader and that person. And then again, how are you going to set that person up for success, right? If they're not working in your office and if it's a remote person, my team, like my wife and I, she owns a business as well. She's our CFO. She does a lot of the marketing stuff, but we're a remote business and we work throughout Northeast Ohio. We've got one employee and team member that's down in Columbus, but everybody works remote. And so with that, again, like Are we giving clear direction? Are we checking in with our team members? Like that stuff's super important. And as you're building, again, this kind of leads into your second question, but like, what's that culture look like? Are you doing a daily huddle meeting? Are you doing a weekly team meeting? Are you doing a one-on-one where you can have some tough conversations? I think that's important. And I'll get into the culture a little bit more, but first hire, definitely an assistant. And then the second one, as you build and grow and scale, depending upon your business, usually like a salesperson. If you hate sales, maybe you're an owner and you're really good at the numbers aspect and the financial part, but you don't like the sales part, go hire someone to do sales for you, right? Kind of, you don't need to have the same person that, is who you are. Kind of find the yin to your yang and let that person go out and run stuff that they're really good at. So I think that's important in the hiring process too, is understanding people's strengths, understanding what they love to do, and then again, kind of hiring for that genius, right? And what they're capable of doing. And then as a small business owner specifically, hire in for maybe one or two levels above where you bring somebody in. Talk about, again, your culture, talk about where you want them to go. Like what's important to them? Where do they want to be in the next 5 years? Do they want to be stuck and just be an assistant? Some people want to do that, and that's totally fine. Other people want opportunities to grow, because when they grow, they can make more money. There's more responsibility. There's more of a challenge. So you got to ask some of those questions. But the salesperson usually would be like the second one that I would kind of look at. And then again, making sure you define the job description. What do you want that person to do? The great thing is if you do a task responsibility worksheet that we use, you'll have a lot of the duties and tasks already listed. And the ones that are $10 and $100, they become the assistant job description, right? So like if you're booking flights and you're going out of town to conferences or to go visit clients, have them book your flights, have them book your rental cars, have them book your hotels. That stuff, again, it takes away from your genius, your brain power to go out and generate revenue or be the face of the company where you're working with clients and being that PR, that public relations person. So understanding, again, where you're at in the journey. Entrepreneurship, I have a mentor I work with. His name's Mark. And he talks about this a lot on our calls. And he mentions that business is a game, right? And like I used to play video games. I grew up on like the Nintendo and the Intellivision, like Atari old school stuff. But there was like level 1-1. And then if you did really well, you got to level 1-2. And then you might be able to find the warp speed. And this is where I think like masterminds and coaching and having the right people, the right circle, you can warp from level 1-2 to level 4-1. But you have to be able to know what questions to ask and be vulnerable. Too many times, entrepreneurs, we need to puff out the chest. I know everything. Well, guess what? Not everybody knows everything. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to ask for help. I'm still learning that. I stink at that at times too, right? So I think some of that's a pride thing. Some of that's I want to prove myself to other people. But at the end of the day, I'm going off on another long-winded tangent. Again, first person would be an assistant. Second person would probably be sales. And then as you grow, probably someone to help with the operations, the day-to-day side, whether it's fulfillment of what you're selling or what you're doing from a product or service standpoint, someone that can handle the day-to-day, because the more you build out the team, the more you can buy back your time. And then you don't have to work and as a solopreneur, you're probably working 80, 90, $100 a week, right? Whether you're doing these kind of things, you're doing networking things, you're doing podcasts, you're doing, going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, you're going out on sales calls, but you still have to go out and execute the work, or you got to work with the team. So it takes away time. And then if you have a family, or if you have other things that you like to do outside of work, everything's pulling at you, right? But we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And where do you spend it? The problem becomes if you're like me, I want to help everybody. So I don't say no. I'm like, sure, I'll help you do this. I'll help you do this. So you got to be guarded with your time. You got to put some guardrails in place. So I'm super excited for Becky to join us on the 31st, because I think she's going to put some guardrails in place for me that I've not been able to do in 6 years of being an entrepreneur and a business owner.
That's
so
awesome.
That was the first question. Did you have anything to follow up before I go into the second about culture?
Maybe not follow up, just kind of tangent off that. So a couple pieces. I had an old mentor that used to say, a yes to something is a no to something else, right? And that really stuck with me. And that every choice that we make, we have to make a decision on, if I say yes to this, what is it going to impact, right? If I say yes to going to my son's baseball game, what am I not going to be able to do? And am I okay with that trade-off? Because the answer to either of those questions is whatever you want it to be, right? There's no right answer. So I think that was key there. Another piece that you mentioned was, which task are you really good at? I listened to a podcast or read a book or something a while back where they were talking about this 4-quadrant system where you write down all the tasks that you do on a daily basis. And then like the x-axis would be things I'm really good at and things I really am bad at. And then y-axis, things I do not like to do and things I love to do. And so you put everything in that quadrant, and then the things that you hate doing and suck at, you immediately delegate. And the things that you really should be doing are the things that you love and you're good at. Everything else over time should slowly be delegated out. So you're working in your area of expertise, your area of perfection. And that's how you can grow your business exponentially over time, because you're finding other people that fit into those other quadrants that's their love it and good at it scenario. Because if I suck at bookkeeping, I'm never going to be good at it, or at least not as good as someone that loves it.
100%. Yeah. Tim does, with the task responsibility sheet, Tim will do the smiley face or the frowny face. So very similar concept. And again, just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you need to be the CEO, right? Like you can still own the business. And if you don't like managing people or dealing with people, you can outsource that. You could hire someone to do that. It could be your operations person. I've got a buddy that owns a construction company, and he doesn't enjoy some of the aspects of the construction, but he likes to go out there and use his hands, and he loves that aspect. Again, like find out, again, to your point, what you're passionate about and go and do that every day, and it won't feel like work at all.
Yeah. I mean, so I own a lending business, right? And yet I hate the bookkeeping finance portion of it. But I have a business partner that absolutely loves bookkeeping, CFO, that kind of stuff. And it lets me do the things I like, which is meetings like this, strategy calls, raising capital, talking to borrowers. And we have a really good system because we both are doing the things we love to do. And it's helped us grow a lot in the last year and a half. And then one other point you made, and I think this is great, was, the Mario example where you jump from level 1.2 to 4.1. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we're all trying to find that magic tube to get us to level 4.1. But then what happens when you get there? Have you developed enough skills and enough knowledge that you can be successful? Because I know when I played Super Mario, when I would go from level 1.2 to 4.1, I would immediately die because I didn't have built up the muscle memory of the skills in order to master that level. And our knowledge and the skills that we have are really our key limiting factor on how our earning potential is, or how big our business can grow. And we have to go through the pain in order to learn those things in order to deserve the right to get to level 4.1. And as you meet other clients and have worked with people for 20 years, have you seen that similar thing that, somebody finds this cheat code and then, they really struggle and they have to go through all that pain in a narrow piece of time versus over a longer piece of time? And then at what level do they have to fall back to level maybe 2.1?
Yeah, definitely. And I think people sometimes they grow too quickly or they find that cheat code. They didn't surround themselves with the right people that are in their circle. I'm a big believer in and I'm not a handyman at all. Like I don't know how to use like a hammer really that well. Trust me. You can ask my wife. She's way more mechanically inclined than I am. But I talk about the proverbial tool belt, right? And so as we continue to grow and learn and develop our skill sets, what tool belt can I put in there? Whether it's, again, listening to this podcast, which Lauren, you're doing a great job with the Brick by Brick podcast. It's how do I continue to build that momentum? And so once I learn a skill or I learn a nugget, I put it in my tool belt. Again, most entrepreneurs don't know that they need to have a labor law poster in their place of employment if they've got W-2 employees that can see and read those things. Most employers don't know that if they have more than 10 employees, especially if you're a small business, you probably don't know about the OSHA 300A log that needs to be posted from February 1st to April 3rd. So there's certain things like that. But once you learn that, you can put that in the tool belt and then you can pull it out as you get to that level. And so I think, again, sometimes growth is great. People are grow, but you got to grow at your right pace. You got to be willing to do the work that comes with the growth. I have another client, a really great friend. His name's Evo. He's like, Scott, he goes, we don't call this growing fun. It's called growing pains, right? And if you really think about the core of that, you're going to go through the blood, sweat, tears. You're going to have great days. Other days, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And that's okay. This is where you need the support system. This is why you need the network. This is why you need to listen to podcasts like this that can build you up. For me personally, I'm a faith-filled guy. This is why I need my faith in order to get me through those tough times, or my family or my friends. Those are the things that are going to matter. And so again, it's okay if you get to level 4.1 and you're not ready to fully conquer it. Maybe you do need to go back to level 3-1 to figure some stuff out so you can be ready to really roll and hit the ground running at the level 4-1. So again, it really is perspective. A lot of entrepreneurship, again, it will trick you, right? Again, leadership and entrepreneurship is lonely, right? It's very lonely. And so you got to be resilient. Our business name is Fortitude HR Solutions. Fortitude is about having courage through adversity. You're going to have adversity in business. You're going to have adversity in life. So how do you handle that? What do you do again? And how do you get yourself out of those things, right? Monday this past week, Lauren, I had a horrible day. I just got kicked in the face 20 times. I felt like I did nothing right at home. I did nothing right at work. It was just a bad day. but we were having like a church mission right now. So I went to this mission. I'm listening to this, the preacher, the priest give a talk, and I'm like, all right, this really makes sense. And it was really good. And so like the next day is a new day, right? And if you've ever read, there's a book out there by Admiral William McRaven about make your bed. And I try to do that every single day, is make my bed. So if I go back into bed at night, I at least did one thing today right. I made my bed. So
Yeah.
that's a long-winded answer too. Sorry.
I was smiling not because I enjoyed that you were having a pain on Monday, right? But because any entrepreneur that I know, if they tell you that they have never had a bad day in their business, they're either not actually owning a business or they're a liar. Because there are days that like you said, you get up and you turn your computer on and it's just like you just get pummeled in the face every single day. And I think the difference between the people that keep going and the people that don't is the people that keep going, they go through it, they have a terrible day, their wife's mad at them, their kids are being jerks, they go to bed, they get up and they start it over, and this is a new day, and the next day is either better or the same or worse, but they get up the next day. The sun's up, and I always tell people when I answer phones, I'm doing fantastic. The sun is up, I'm vertical, everything else is gravy. Right. And you've got to have some level of that optimistic drive in you. Otherwise, you just get beaten down in the ground like a tent stake. Mm-hmm. So
can't agree more. It's again, how do we continue to rise up? And again, this is why I love HR, because we get to build up other people, right? We get to support other people. We get to make an impact. And so again, we all have choices, right? We can be a jerk to everybody, or we can be kind and helpful and supportive. And I'd rather be kind, supportive, and helpful. It's going to get me a lot farther in life. It's going to get me to reach my goals much quicker than, doing some of the things that I see other people doing. So do you want me to answer your second question about like culture and how do you stay engaged with that, with like the values and the mission and the vision, and what does that look like?
That's exactly where I was going now.
Okay. So as far as that, again, like I think we set the tone as leaders. Again, and one of my lines I love about leadership is what you permit is what you promote. And so again, I have good days with this and bad days, so I'm not perfect, right? But again, especially if you have a remote team, are you talking to them? Are you checking in? Are you having the difficult or the hard conversations? I had to have a conversation recently with one of my team members about we're not hitting our numbers, and I'm not going to continue to like do all the work, to support them. And I'm like, hey, like, what do we need to do in order to get the results? Like, what help do you need from me? How can you support the other people on the team? And we've got to be willing to have those kind of conversations. And do I love having them? No, I'm a human being. I don't love conflict, right? But I guess what? It's part of your job. And so, Simon Sinek's got a great YouTube video about how to have difficult conversations. And so if you ever get a chance, you can YouTube that. But with that, I think, again, like the culture is what the expectation you set. How are you communicating? How are you treating people? If you say you're going to do something, you better do it. Kind of that kind of mentality. You could do, put stuff on social media. These are our values. Pick out how we live out our values. Make them very tangible. People will put like shirts together and they'll have the acronym of these are the values. And then again, it becomes a branding tool, essentially, Lauren. Again, you come from marketing as well, so you understand this. But I used to play baseball in high school, and I wear like the Letterman jacket to like the local mall. And our coach is like, Scott, he goes, when you go to that mall, you don't act like an idiot because you represent the baseball team. You represent me as the coach. You represent the high school, and you represent yourself. And that's always stuck with me. So with that, again, like how do you represent yourself? How do you hold yourself when you're out in public? Hopefully you're doing the same thing when you're in private and you're living the right kind of life. The other thing I would say is, when you're hiring people, you need to hire based upon values, So for example, teamwork. Teamwork's one of your values. That's great. You're not going to just ask the candidates, can you live out the value of teamwork? Everybody's going to tell you yes. It's, okay, how do you live out the value of teamwork? Tell me what you've done in the last couple of employers to contribute to a team atmosphere or a teamwork environment. If they can't give you a good example or good situations where they've worked in, they're probably not the right fit for your organization.
Do you do it as bluntly as that in an interview? Like, how do you live out or are you asking leading questions to get an idea of what their teamwork value is without giving them the cue that, hey, I'm trying to get to the answer of teamwork?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell them like, usually these are our core values. This is what we stand for. And I want you to tell me how you lived out this value. So I'm very direct with that versus, beating around the bush and trying to ask it nonchalantly. Again, I want to get to know the person, and I'm not real good at surface level. So it's like, all right, let's get away from like the sun is beautiful today. Like, that's great. But again, like, how do you live out teamwork? Or tell me how you've been resourceful. I'm not going to always be around to hold your hand, especially as business owners, right? Small business owners or new business owners. You're not always going to be available to help somebody every single minute of the day. We've got a remote team. I'm not like checking in on them 24/7. Are they doing every little thing? We're not using Time Doctor or Hub Staff to monitor every keystroke that they're doing to make sure they're not watching YouTube or watching a movie while they're supposed to be working. You could have that culture if that's what you want. We don't do that. But so with that, I've got to be able to trust them, and I've got to be able to let them be empowered to make decisions and be resourceful. If I'm not available, make the decision. You know what I mean? In some organizations, like big companies, like where you and I came from, Lauren, they typically will put what's called LOAs in place, level of authority agreements. And they say for, this amount of money, if it's a financial decision, you have this type of authority. If you need to go above that, you got to get other people involved in that decision. I think, again, we have to set the expectations. We set the parameters. But again, like, how are we treating our people? Are we doing little things to show them appreciation? That stuff goes a long way in building culture and building the vision and the values and kind of what you're doing.
Yeah. So when I was in my W-2, our HR always talked about the tree metaphor. And so you had level of decision power based on where you are in the tree. So as an individual contributor, you were a leaf, right? You could make a decision that would impact that leaf, and then a branch could impact a branch and a leaf, and then all the way down, which in theory makes sense. But as someone that is relatively aggressive, thinks of themselves as strategically strong, and has a relatively high opinion of himself, to tell me that I was a leaf level contributor and that was as high, it was demoralizing, or maybe demotivating is a better word for it. So I think I understand where they're trying to go with that, but I think that you have to be careful as an owner of making sure people feel empowered to do the right thing without taking action that's going to have large negative impacts on the business.
1,000% agree. And you just hit on something that, again, a lot of business owners need to understand. And we talked about this with another client. I was sitting in a strategic leadership meeting today with a client, and like, words matter, and our tone and our dictation and our, like, how we communicate things, and we can't put something in an email joking, ha ha ha. I can do this sometimes with my wife or my son, and I'm trying really hard to change the behavior, because I could just think it's funny, but it's not funny to them. And so we got to be mindful about what we say and how we say it, and our tone and the way that we're communicating, because that has a huge impact, right? Like, for you, that was demotivating for you. And so, like, again, maybe there's a better analogy, or maybe there's a better way to explain it. So again, like, when we're going through, I've done a lot with like change management in my corporate career, where we've got bought out by another company, and how do you integrate them to the new culture? And a lot of it is, again, what's in it for that person? How does it benefit them? And then how do we get people to buy into it? And as soon as you get a couple people to buy into it, usually it spreads, to the good. You can find, like, we call them change agents in an HR setting. So again, how do we get some change agents that want to help us, that are people that have some influence? And again, there's some stuff that you're going to have to do no matter what. But then there's other things that, again, it's more of a softer sell or a softer approach.
What happens if you hire somebody and they become a change agent, but towards your culture and in the direction you don't want it to go?
You got to address it right away. I mean, you got to have the conversations. Again, a lot of people don't want to have the conversations, but let's say it's like, I hire Sally, and Sally's, my newest team member, and she's great at her job, but she goes against everything we believe in as an organization. She's not treating our team members right. She might be great with our customers or our clients, but there's behind the scenes stuff. I've had different analogies for this throughout my 20 years in HR almost now, Lauren. So, there's the cancers, it's the disruptive elements, the DEs or the trolls. They will bring down culture. They will bring down other team members. And when they're not performing, those people that are high performers or high contributors, they get upset because they think you're not doing anything to take care of Sally. So then you start losing those people. It becomes a negative domino effect. I put a post on this about LinkedIn recently that my wife actually did. And so, like, really got good traction because it's controversial. People are like, oh, like, did I give them the right training? Did I give them the right opportunities? You only can try to train and develop somebody so much. At some point, it's going to be a personality thing. And if you've given them clear direction and you've coached them up on it, you've provided training, and they still don't perform it the way that they're supposed to, or they're still doing that negative behavior that's influencing your high performers or the workplace or the clients or the customers you work with, you've got to make a change. And I'm not saying you got to fire, but maybe you've got to go down the discipline route, and you've got to do the verbal warning, and then you got to go to written warning. And hey, Sally, if this doesn't discontinue your behavior in a negative way, we're going to have another conversation. The next one's going to be, you're not going to be working here. I don't want that. You're a good contributor. We appreciate the value, because turnover is expensive, right? That's something else too. They don't really talk about. Like, the cost of turnover in business can be anywhere between 1.5 and 2 times what somebody makes, right? And if someone's been with you a lot longer and let's say they're in a sales role and they're generating revenue, it can be way higher than that 2 times that salary. But somebody that might be in an administrative or a support role might be 1.5 to 2 times. You've got all the hard recruiting costs. If you're paying a third-party recruiting firm like what we do, it could be your own internal recruiting costs of your team members. There's assessments, there's drug screens, there's pre-employment background checks. You've got the time that it takes to develop and train that new hire that you bring in. And then you've got like just the morale, the stuff that are like variables that you can't kind of quantify. How much was that person like? Did they have a bunch of influence? Are they not going to work as hard because they just saw Sally leave? So you got to understand that stuff also. So this is where the strategy comes into, like having a good HR person that's by your side that can help you with these things. Because a lot of times it's not always black and white. There's an area of gray. It's like when there's an issue in the workplace, Lauren, between two people, there's always three sides to the story, right? Person A, person B, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And we can't just take things on emotion and drama. We got to find out what the facts are. We have to investigate. We have to ask good questions, and we have to make decisions based upon facts. That's our jobs as leaders. Too many times entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners, they run on emotion. We're like, well, that person did me wrong, so I'm going to stick it to them now. That's the wrong way to do it, right? So again, we got to understand where that comes from, and we got to understand, again, how are we building up other people versus, sticking it to them.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think one thing you did say that could be scary to new entrepreneurs is that 1.5 times number, right? Because I think new entrepreneurs, and I've been guilty of this as well, we've got somebody on our team, they're maybe not performing as well as we want them to, but we don't want to lose them because A, they're taking something off our plate. Maybe it's not enough, but they are taking something off. We know it's going to be painful to A, to have the conversation to let them go and hire a new person and onboard them. And now you add on that it's going to cost, 1.5 times their salary to do that. And it leads to this stagnation where the companies and people aren't growing the way they should be because no one's having those hard conversations. No one's, letting the person go that needs to go because they're a cancer. And how have you seen people get past that kind of mental block, or do they just need to get the skills and the knowledge that you going from level 1.2 to 4.1, pull up your big girl pants and get the job done and deal with it because it's going to be better long term?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely will be better long term. A lot of times it's a mental shift. It's a mindset thing, right? At the end of the day. And so, I think surrounding yourself with the right people, again, educating yourself with this great podcast that Lauren's got, again, brick by brick, make sure you subscribe and listen. But I mean, those things go a long way. Having the right support system, because again, when you're in groups of other places or you've got a consultant or a coach, they probably have been there and done that. They can walk you through that lonely road where you're like, what do I do here? I don't know. I don't have that skill set. I've never been in HR, so I don't know what's the right process or the approach. So I think having like a team, even if you've got, again, as a small business owner, you can have fractional people that can help you along the journey until you're able to go hire a full-time person. And so I think, again, it comes down to that. Again, and the other big thing too, what you said is, I'd rather have somebody, and I'm guilty of this too at times, where we're not removing quick enough. But again, if I'm upsetting other people that are high performers, I'm doing more damage to my business that way. So you got to look at the opportunity cost. I think that's one thing. And the other thing, you had mentioned this, and I'm sorry, my brain just went all over the place here, Lauren, but about like W-2 versus a 1099. Again, when they're W-2, they work for you, they work with you, right? I always say they work with me, they don't work for me. So they work with me. We can say, hey, we work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Here's our schedule. Here's our deliverables. This is how we want it done. You can dictate and control that. When you're an independent contractor, a 1099 person that works with you, you can't really tell them what hours to work. You're not telling them how to do the work. It's here's your job that we need you to do. This is the scope of the work. Here's an independent contractor agreement. This is how we're going to agree to pay you. And then they can go work with 20 other clients too, right? So again, like too many times, again, business owners, we get it wrong. We try to go the cheap route because the independent contractor, we don't have to pay FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare. We don't have to do unemployment. We don't have to do workers' comp. And again, as a small business owner, what gives you the competitive advantage? Why does someone want to work for Lauren or Scott as a small business owner versus the big organizations that offer medical, dental, vision, retirement, all these other great benefits? You as an individual owner of the business, you need to look in the mirror and say, why is my company awesome? Why do I have a great opportunity for people? What's my competitive advantage? What opportunity can I give them that these big companies can't? And you need to be communicating that. In sales, you hear always be closing or always be selling. I will tell you from a people standpoint, it's always be recruiting. It's always be hiring. It's always putting the net out there and seeing what might bite. What does your bench strength look like? Maybe you're not ready to go hire that operations person for your team right now, but it might be 6 months from now. I'd much rather you talk about, hey, this is where we're going, this is where we're growing, putting stuff out on social media, doing Facebook Lives, doing stuff where you're getting people that are following you. Because when you're ready to say, hey, I'm ready to hire this operations coordinator, and this is what this person's going to be doing, who do you know that I should talk to? You'll get flooded with people that are like raising their hand. I want to be a part of this. This is awesome. I love what you're building. Tim always tells me, and I'm horrible at it because I don't love social media, Lauren, but don't be a secret agent. Like, tell people what you're doing, because people typically, they want to get, they want to be a part of great organizations. They want to be a part of building something that's going to be like impactful and helping other people. So again, like, what do you stand for? What are you doing? How do you compete? Again, for me personally, I'd much rather have W-2 team members that I can meet with. I think there's a level of accountability that's there, even if it's like via Zoom. You can do that with independent contractors, but again, you really can't dictate schedules. So you got to be careful with the IRS and the Fair Labor Standards Act and some of the employment laws. So just be mindful of that. I'd rather you do it the right way, spend a little bit more money. Again, it's a fear-based thing. Here's the thing too. If you had to hire somebody that was $50,000 a year, you're not paying that full $50,000 the one that they start, right? If they're not working for you and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing after 1, 2, 3 months, they can go away, right? So you're not on the hook for that full $50,000 salary. So it's something you need to be like mindful of. And this goes back to the mindset shift. So again, it's a big thing. It's a big deal. No one talks about that, when you're like starting a business. Like, there's a lot of things that you really have to go through. And this is where leadership is lonely. Entrepreneurship is lonely. This is why you need a good support system around you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all that. I think, when we start out as entrepreneurs, it's all about like, oh, it's a hockey stick, right? My revenue is going to start here. And then, in year 5, I'm going to be driving a Lambo and doing whatever. The reason I named this podcast Brick by Brick is because I had those same thoughts at the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, where it was just going to grow and I was going to have all this money and whatever. And what I've realized, and I've had to take some unfortunate steps, forward and then backwards, is that it has to be a solid foundation that you put down, and you build that wall brick by brick all the way up to where you want your dreams to be, right? And the only way that wall gets there is if you continue to go and you don't stop. And along the way, you're going to learn how to go around a curve, how to do all these other things, right? Following this analogy and dealing with this, exactly what you're talking about is one of those things. Should I hire a W-2 employee? And honestly, I'm sitting here not having any W-2 employees. I have some contractors that do some things for me, but I'm scared of getting a W-2 employee for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned. I understand that it's not 50,000; it's like 2 to 3 months of it. But it's just, the same reason that people don't start a business is the same reason that they get stuck in the spot they're in their business. Is they get comfortable doing all the things and they don't want to take that next step to learn and grow.
Yep, 100%. And like, at some point though, like, your time is going to get maxed out and you're not going to be able to do anymore. And so like, we're at that point in our business journey right now. And so in order for us to grow and take the next level up from level 2.1 to 2.2, we've got to add some additional team members. And again, I take hiring, it's a serious thing. I'm responsible for that team member and their family and their livelihood, right? So I've got to make sure that and this is where a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, whether big or small, they get it wrong. They don't onboard correctly. They hire someone, like, throw them to the wolves, go figure it out. You'll be fine. Wrong answer, right? Even if you're a resourceful person, you need some type of guidance. You need some type of guardrails. Here's what I want you to do the first week. This is what we're doing the second week. So as we get ready to bring Becky on, my wife Laura and I were building out the onboarding plan. Like, we're talking about what she's going to do the first week. What does the first month look like? What's the second month look like? And then like, my wife Laura's got a document where we're creating, like, you can help with this, because there's things that you're doing, and it's like, I don't need to do it all myself anymore. I've got someone that can help me. So again, like, the big thing, the reason why a lot of people become entrepreneurs, besides the money aspect, like you mentioned, Lauren, it's the time freedom, right? Again, like, where do you spend that time? And again, if I can get a little bit of back of my time because Becky's helping me better manage my schedule, even, that's going to be a huge win. I'm really guilty, Lauren, where like, my wife wants to eat dinner at like 5 or 5:30 every night as a family. I think it's a great thing. I'm stupid. I'll do a call at 5 to 6 and I always blow that off, right? And that's not because I'm trying to be disrespectful. I just don't think. I'm like, oh, this client needs me, so I'm helping this client, which, by the way, that client pays us, so I'm helping her family. So, but there's another part of that where my wife's like the family time is important, and she's 1,000% right. So it's, again, becomes that balance or that juggling act. And I'm still learning it at this, and I'm six years into this in June, right? Again, so I don't have it all figured out. I learn, I grow. I have my own business coach that I work with. I've got mentors that I talk to when I'm in trouble or I'm not sure about stuff. I'm also not afraid to go to my team and say, you know what, team, we had a really lousy month. Like what are we going to do differently this month? Like what ideas do you have? I think we've got to be willing to do that and not have the ego and the pride come in place. We got to be able to be vulnerable, ask for help. I'm still learning that too, right? So I'm in full transparency. I'm not perfect at it. Tim gives me a hard time, Lauren. He says I'm the shoemaker with holes in his feet, with the holes in the feet. Because I mean, I think the thing that gives me credibility in what I do, Lauren, is I've been there, I've done it. I've worked for a $2 billion organization. I know how to build high performing teams. I know how to hire people. I've done it all, right? I know what some of these pitfalls are that a lot of people are in. I've been there, I've done it, I've helped people through it. The problem is I don't help ourselves as Fortitude HR Solutions. So you know what? This year it's about helping Fortitude HR Solutions. The last year, unfortunately, my mom had pancreatic cancer, so we had pulled back a little bit. The year before that, my recruiting manager, he had pancreatic cancer. So we had 2 years where it was just, we need to survive. We need to support our team. We need to support our family. And that's what we did. This year, right now, like we started off really well, we can take care of us. And so, you know, we're going to go to Italy. I was telling you before we started this thing as a family. And so am I going to work when I'm in Italy? Yes, right? Because probably a workaholic. I'm obsessed. But I also want to help people, right? So again, there's that fine line. Eventually, I'll understand the balance. Maybe I won't. I don't understand moderation. I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. So this is a struggle for me. But I guess the reason why I'm sharing all this is other listeners are probably going through the same thing. Again, what do I need to give up control of? How can I delegate some of that stuff? But if you do 100% of the activities 100% of the time, you'll never have any more of your time back. You'll cap out and you will never be able to grow. So again, this is why it's important. Again, and if you want to hire independent contractors, that's fine. You can use those people to help with tasks and responsibilities. Virtual assistants are great people too. Again, they're human beings. So they're great people. A lot of times business owners are like, well, they're just a VA. Well, no, that's garbage, right? They're a human being, but you got to set them up for success too. Here's what I want you to do. Again, go out and execute it, and get it done. Let's communicate. Let's make sure we're providing them, with information so they're not like running things, without your input.
I mean, it takes work, right? To get anybody up and running, whether they're W-2 or contractor or VA. If you want them to be successful, you have to put extra work in to get them successful. And if you don't do that, then you're lacking the plan. And so you're planning to fail, right? Huh? Or however that quote goes.
Great saying. Yep.
I butchered it, but it
was good. I understood the message. You did a great job.
Yeah. So I think people just need to get out of their head of like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's going to cause more work for me. The long-term view is always going to be more successful than the short-term view, and by planning to have someone in place is going to take things off your plate that, will give you more time, is going to give you more time to do the things. It's not like you're like taking time off your plate so you can go sit on the beach. Maybe you are, but most of the people I know, and I'm like you, I'm an all or nothing person. My wife gives me crap about it constantly. But if I get stuff taken off my plate, I'm just going to go pick up more stuff to do, which will probably be the stuff that I like doing, which guess what's probably the stuff that's more profitable and better for the business. Right. And that's how it's grown. And I've seen that recently. We hired a couple of people that were doing some tasks that I was doing, which honestly, I was doing a poor job at it, paid $300 a week for them to do it. And now I have all this other time for other things, which now is, drastically increased our revenue take this month. But you have to get over the fear that you're wasting money, right? Stop thinking about it as spending money and start thinking about it as investing.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's always the what if. Well, what if you actually went out and you hired that person and they were able to take stuff off and you had more time freedom, or you were able to make more money, or you were able to help that person build a great life for them and their family? Like, what if? But what if you don't do it? You're going to always be stuck in that same place, right? You're never going to be able to grow. You're going to get capped out. You're going to hit your head against the brick wall, right? To use the brick by brick analogy. So you're going to be like beating your head against it, versus if you've got a team of people that you surround yourself with, they can run through the brick wall, maybe even before you, right? And then again, this is why the culture matters. This is why the values matter. This is why you got to take care of people, because they'll be the first ones that run through the brick wall for you if you do it right.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I love that. So just a couple more things here. I don't want to take a ton of your time, but you mentioned family. Family is extremely important to me. And as entrepreneurs, I just want to kind of get your opinion on how you balance, your work with your business and your family. And I know your wife's part of the family, how you balance that so that you're not just working constantly, but the business is growing, how the family is growing and how they're staying together. Right.
Yeah, so I do a lousy job at it. Just being very transparent. I do a lousy job at it. Like there's not uncommon. If you looked at my calendar, we use Gmail for email and our calendar and stuff like that. Like it will be like on a Thursday, like to yesterday, I went from 8 o'clock until 6 o'clock back to back to back. I gave myself no breaks, and so like my son and I were like, "Oh, we got to get a haircut because I had this today." I'm on another podcast tomorrow and another one on Monday. I'm like, I got to look good for this. My mother-in-law's coming to town. So I had to make sure I tried to like clean and contribute. And so like, I don't do a great job at it, just being very transparent. We went to Hawaii recently for a work trip. My family got to go, my wife, my son, and his girlfriend. So we had a great time. I did have some downtime, but again, this is where I know I need help, Lauren. I struggle with it. So Becky's going to be able to help me, I think, with my calendar management. I'm too accessible to people. And that's because I really want to help. And because I'm a giver, that kind of puts my family sometimes on the back burner. I am lucky. I'm not always, I don't consider this lucky, but my wife and I, we only have one son, right? We have one child. He's 17. He'll be 18 next week. He's not always home. So if he's not home, I don't feel bad if I'm working, right? My wife, is also in the business. So we'll work together late at night. We'll try to strategize. We're building some courses to try to help people because like our funnel is right now, you work with Scott or you don't work with Scott on consulting, right? There's no other choice. So we've got to hire another consultant. We're talking about doing that this year, or a generalist, someone that can help out, some of that stuff. On the recruiting side, we've got a team of people. I don't need to be involved in that. So that's really nice. Like Dennis does an amazing job and with our recruiting team. But with that, that's given me some of the freedom to then be like, okay, I can go out to dinner with my family. And I try to not be on my phone the whole time. I try to make sure I'm like, it's the quality time versus the quantity of time. My son, he likes Xbox. I'll be like, hey, you want to play like Madden football or the NCAA football, the college football game? So we'll play that occasionally. I used to do a lot more. I travel quite a bit, Lauren, for work. And so when I do travel, like the fact that my wife and my son and his girlfriend got to go with me, that was nice. We had some family time. And then, my wife will come with me if I have trips too, and my son stays home. So I don't do a great job. I feel like I'm just talking in a circle. Just to be very blunt, I suck at it. It's an area of improvement. I try to do the best I can, trying to be cognizant. I try to spend some time and then like we'll watch a movie. But like, I don't know about you, like when I have a Thursday and I'm 8 to 6 back to back, like I'm drained. I don't really have much more than sitting in front of the TV while I eat dinner. And then I'm back on the computer at night in order to catch up from all the deliverables and stuff I didn't get done. So it's an area that I need to continue to work on. I'm not going to tell you and sit here with your listeners or anybody that's watching or listening to this and say, I've got it all figured out. I don't. People that do, they're really good at their calendar. They're good at time blocking. They're good at setting boundaries. We do the time blocking on our calendar. We try to set boundaries, but if I get a phone call from somebody and they're like, oh, I need to talk to you because I got this crisis going on, or I build relationships with my clients. So I become friends with a lot of them and they got this personal thing going on. I pick up the phone. And the hard part has been at the detriment of my family and not spending time with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Thanks for the honesty on that. I think that most maybe not most, a lot of entrepreneurs are in a similar boat because I also forfeit time with my family to do this. And you always blame, oh, it's a season. We're in a season of growth, and then we'll go on. And I aspire to being one of those people that has enough systems and processes and people in place that I can kind of remove myself. Not always, but when I need to be with my family. But it's definitely an area that a lot of people that have businesses struggle with because you feel like you need to be the guy, the girl, the person that takes the phone call, that's there. If a customer, if I don't close this deal, food off the family's plate, that whole mindset. I had, when I had Dan Martell as a coach there for a while, one of the things he always said was like, most of you have executive assistants. You're not using them correctly. They don't have to just work on business stuff, because if they can schedule doctor's appointments and order your groceries and do all these things, that means you have more time to grow the business, right? And if you don't have to do all those menial tasks, you can then focus your time and energy on spending quality time with your wife and your kids. Delegation is about taking things off your plate. So hire the housekeeper, get your lawn taken care of by someone else, have your EA take care of your calendar and your groceries and order, schedule your appointments. And when you have that time, try to put your phone away and be with your family. Don't worry about, I've got to rake the lawn and I got to mow the grass and I've got to do all these other things. Go get ice cream or do something that there's going to be memories, right? Because memories are based off emotion, and no one has anything but negative emotions around vacuuming.
I love the vacuum, so I'm weird, but I don't cut the grass anymore. We hire that out. But you're right. Like, what can you hire out? What can you outsource? Those are things that, again, they're critical as you grow, because again, there's only so much time, and we all get the same amount of time every day.
Awesome. So as we kind of cut this to an end, what are some parting messages you have for the audience?
Yeah, I would say, invest in yourself, continue to develop yourself, listen to podcasts like this, be in the right rooms, build your network. That's important. And again, if you can combine activities. So Lauren, I think when I met you, I was probably a little bit heavier. I've gone through this big health journey. I've gained weight, I've lost weight. But again, can I listen to podcasts or can I watch a YouTube video to help learn something while I'm doing that activity? So what can I batch together? I think that's been an important thing for me. And then I would say, don't be afraid of the first hire, embrace it, lean into it, because I think it's going to help give you your time back. And we talked a lot about that in this podcast. And then I think the other thing is, hire up. Don't just settle for this thing. Again, I would talk about the opportunity. And this is where, again, your culture comes in, your why. Why does someone want to work with you? Know your competitive advantage and tell as many people as possible, right? Communicate that. Again, don't be the secret agent, that we talked about earlier. And that will help you, again, attract the right people into your network. But also when you're ready to hire that next team member, they'll be ready already. Hey, Lauren, I'm ready to go. Tell me when you're ready to hire me, kind of thing. Because again, people will be attracted to you, and just be authentic. Don't be the entrepreneur or the business owner that says, I got it all figured out, right? I'd rather, I'm very honest with you and your guests or your members and people that are listening. The family thing I suck at. I'm really, really bad at. So be honest. People read through the authenticity of what you say. And so again, just be honest, be transparent, and people will, pick up that and they'll do business with you because they know that you're an authentic person.
Awesome. I appreciate your time today, Scott. If people want to reach out to you, where is the best place for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, Fortitude. So it's www.fortitudeHRsolutions.com. So that's our website. They can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I'm happy to help answer any questions I can and try to help out with your growing business. And just keep fighting. Don't give up. It's one day at a time, and just make sure you keep that positive mindset and you surround yourself with the right people. So thank you so much. Great conversation.
That was great. Yeah, to keep growing your business brick by brick. I will make sure I add all of your handles and website to the show notes for this podcast. And I really appreciate you coming on, talking to us about HR, which isn't always probably the most top of mind topic that people have. But it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you joining.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Lauren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.